What if we told you that France is still actively working in the Sahel region, despite the fact that 3 countries in the Sahel have cut off ties with it, thereby reducing its influence? Would you be surprised? Well, you shouldn't be after all. Even though African countries gained independence some decades ago, the stark reality on ground is that colonization has not ended. The system and structure that powered colonization are still in place till today, so it's baffling why some people think colonization has ended. Think about it. France had one of the highest numbers of colonies in Africa, and history tells us that it was because of these colonies that France was able to rise to its current place as one of the world's global powers. One French leader is reported to have said that without Africa, France would become a third world country. This tells us how important Africa is to France. So knowing this, do you think that the government of France would just relax and accept that their influence is reducing in Africa as a result of the leaders of Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso? The answer to that is no. Withdrawing its military troops from Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso may seem like a victory for these countries, but it has opened an opportunity for France to carry out covert and clandestine operations to spread their influence in the Sahel. This time, France is not influencing the leaders of the Sahel to carry out its interests because that avenue has been closed, but France is using other tactics, and among them is fueling insurgents groups. Yes, you heard that right. France is fueling insurgents groups in the region to cause destabilization in the region. It may seem almost barbaric to say it, because France, like other countries in the West, prides itself on being the guardian of democracy and human rights. But history tells us that these so-called guardians are actually the ones that have perpetuated crimes and abused human rights to serve the interests. We all are aware of the countless number of times that France has carried out assassination attempts, many which have succeeded on African leaders who stand against them or have a different ideology from them. So, the idea that France is fueling the insurgency in the Sahel region, while barbaric, should not be shocking. But before we dive into that, let's talk about France's new strategy in the Sahel region. As we said, France's withdrawal from the Sahel is just a facade and an illusion from the truth, which is that it hasn't really changed the dynamics of power that has existed since the period of colonization. French terres rouges may not be physically present and diplomatic relations frayed, but the infrastructure of control remains firmly in place. This infrastructure is built on decades of intelligence networks, economic dependence, and political alliance, all of which have been carefully crafted to suit and promote the interest of France. This was confirmed by Vincent Cr, a former operative of the French Foreign Intelligence Service, DGSE. According to Vincent and his colleagues, the withdrawal of French forces from the Sahel region is not necessarily a setback, but an opportunity and a chance to change tactics from overt military presence to covert tactics. Now, according to reports, France intelligence agents have been repositioned to neighboring countries such as Benin and Nigeria, where they continue to monitor, operate, and manipulate events in the Sahel region. Not surprisingly, this repositioning is a calculated move by France to keep France's hands in the affairs of the Sahel region without the obvious footprint of a military occupation. By relocating their operatives to nearby countries, France can maintain the illusion of respecting the sovereignty and decision of the leaders of the Sahel while also exercising control over the affairs of things from neighboring countries. Now, one of the ways to maintain control over a region is to control the security of the region. Recent reports have emerged which revealed that France has been covertly supplying arms to insurgents organizations operating in the Lake Chad Basin, including Boko Haram and other Islamic jihadist groups. The question is why? Why would France arm groups causing chaos and instability in a region? The answer and logic behind this strategy is cold and inhumane. Think about it. By keeping the region destabilized, France can justify the necessity of its military presence and intervention in the region. According to reports, the weapons are channeled through a network of intermediaries and shadowy army dealers, which ensure that there is no direct connection to France. These shadowy arm dealers then deliver the weapons to insurgents groups under the guise of being supplied by rogue actors or other regional powers. It's no wonder that last month, President Traoré of Burkina Faso accused France, Benin, and Ivory Coast of destabilizing his country. Speaking in front of the Palais des Sports in Ouagadougou, President Traoré accused the imperialists, France, of wanting to plunder and destabilize Burkina Faso, as well as other West African countries. He said France failed in its anti-terrorism efforts, and instead of leaving the country, it has turned to destabilization efforts in Burkina Faso. Specifically, he stated that he has evidence of destabilization orchestrated against Burkina Faso by France and supported by Benin and Ivory Coast. Traoré went further to express concerns over the policies of Benin and Ivory Coast's leaders, specifically highlighting that there are 2 French bases in Benin targeting Burkina Faso. According to Traoré, these 2 French bases are used to train terrorists in Benin, and they are designed to destabilize Burkina Faso. He further added that Burkina Faso has concrete proof of the existence of the French bases, including tracks laid and soldiers equipped. He also said that there are audio recordings of French agents in Benin collaborating with terrorist operations. Now, aside from relocating its operatives to neighboring countries, France has also maintained control through its networks of companies and financial institutions. Think about Niger's uranium, for instance, which is critical for France's energy sector. French company Orano is still very much active in Niger, profiting billions of naira yearly from exploiting its uranium. Although the military government of Niger has made some moves to reduce the control Orano has in Niger's uranium sector, the fact remains that the company is still active in the country. President Traoré is not the only one that has accused France of causing instability, insecurity, and destabilization in the region. Early this year, in January to be specific, the Prime Minister of Mali said something similar. He said that in the same way, the UN Security Council sowed disorder in Libya by assassinating Muammar. It's the same way France sowed chaos in Mali. In his own words, the Prime Minister said that, "So you create chaos, you arm people, you tell them to go and divide Mali." The separatists clearly said that it was France that was behind the separatist movements of 2011 from Libya. The leaders of the movement said France had instigated them to invade northern Mali and divide it and create an independent state. We are not the ones saying that. It is the leaders of this movement who say so and are supported by French politicians. Interestingly, this was not the first time Mali was raising the issue of France's subversive efforts in the country. In 2022, the foreign minister of Mali, Abdoulaye Diop, wrote a letter to the United Nations accusing France of supporting jihadists and violating Mali's airspace. According to Minister Diop, he has several elements proving that illegal incursions into Malian airspace have been used by France to collect information for the benefit of terrorist groups and to drop them weapons and ammunition. The letter speaks of some 50 repetitive and frequent violations of Malian airspace by French forces since the start of 2022. Drones, helicopters, or fighter planes had flown over Mali without authorization from Bamako. Diop further stated that France carried out spying activities, including packages dropped by the French army on 8 August. This was proved after clandestine and uncoordinated overflight operations by France were conducted after an attack on Tessit camp, which claimed the lives of 42 Malian soldiers. Although Minister Diop called for an emergency meeting with the United Nations to address these claims, no such meeting was arranged, and the issue died out. It is said that every rumor has an element of truth, and in this scenario, it is the same thing. It may seem wild to accuse France of such actions, but if you think about the history of France and Africa, you would understand that it is something that France can do as long as it is in their interest. However, besides France's history, recent news about how Ukraine helped armed rebels in Mali confirms that Western countries can do anything as long as it involves protecting their interest. According to the reports, the armed rebels launched a heavy attack on Mali's military, which led to the death of at least 84 Russian mercenaries and 47 Malian soldiers over 3 days of fighting. While the nation was still reeling from the losses suffered, the spokesperson for Ukraine's military intelligence agency, Andriy Yusov, told the public broadcaster Suspilny that the Malian rebels had received all the information they needed, which allowed them to carry out their operation against the Russian war criminals. In fact, he categorically said, the rebels received the necessary information they needed that allowed them to conduct a successful operation. To make matters worse, after the attack, the Tuareg rebels published an appeal to Ukrainians. They expressed solidarity with Ukraine in the fight against Russia and offered to hand over the captured mercenaries of the PMC Wagner. Now, if you put all these together, the first question that comes to mind is, how did the authorities in Ukraine know that the Tuareg rebels received the necessary information needed to launch the attack? Secondly, why did the Tuareg rebels express solidarity with Ukraine in the fight against Russia? The answer to these two questions is obvious. Ukraine is responsible for providing the information to the Tuareg rebels. So why did they do that? It's simple. Ukraine has been looking for ways to undermine the influence of Russia in Africa and decided that the elimination of a handful of Wagner mercenaries, whose loss would cause no meaningful harm to the Russian war machine, is more important to its cause than the support of entire African nations and the lives of African soldiers. If Ukraine can do it, it's not far-fetched to say that France can arm the insurgents to cause chaos and instability in the Sahel region. Thankfully, however, the leaders of the Sahel region, including Ibrahim Traoré, are aware of the situation and hopefully together with other members of the AES Confederation, will be able to find a solution to the complete freedom of the Sahel region. What are your thoughts? Let us know in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video.